Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to the next installment of our True Gentlemen Initiative webinar series entitled Service and Philanthropy, Involvement on Campus and in the Community. Here with us tonight is Shay Stewart, Cockrell Regional Director, Stephen Cronenberg, the Foster Regional Director. We have also with us James Irwin, who's the Director of Educational Programs. My name is Patrick Stiff, and I will be moderating tonight. And I also see that we have William Winstead, who's also one of our field staff. If you'd like to communicate with us or pose any questions, you can do in two ways. We've got a Q&A box to the right-hand side, of your screen. Feel free to type in a question there and pose it. We'll answer it either online or, if it requires us to get more involved, we will answer it at the conclusion of the presentation. Also, you can shoot us a message over chat. Either having any issues, you can message James or myself privately, or ask a question in chat, and we will try to address it there. That being said, I'm going to turn over the mic to our two presenters, Shay and Stephen, for their presentation. Guys?
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Patrick. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm glad that all of you guys are able to join us on this Tuesday evening/afternoon, depending on where you guys might be located. I guess for tonight, as Patrick had mentioned there, what we're going to do is kind of just go a little brief overview of service and philanthropy. One of the main focuses that we're going to also keep throughout this entire presentation is kind of a reminder of the TG Day of Service that's coming up on April 26th through the 28th next month. So I guess, Shay, unless you've got anything, we'll kind of just go ahead and jump right in.
Nope, I think we're ready to learn as much as we can.
Perfect. All right, so our intended outcomes for tonight, how to successfully plan an event. We'll definitely jump in there. And as Patrick mentioned, if you guys have questions throughout this, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat box there. We'll go through and we'll continue on to identify different partners to support your event. And those may be on campus or otherwise. Again, reiterating the TG Day of Service, how to effectively publicize your event, and then moving on to just a few reminders as they relate to the shield. So, one of the questions that I've kind of been asking myself as I travel around to my chapters with regard to service and philanthropy is sort of why do we even participate in service and philanthropy? And that's not to ask the question, should we not participate in it, but more along the lines of, when we're actually planning these events, why do we do this? There's generally a higher purpose for doing these kind of things other than to just put it in a package or something along those lines, or at least, we hope so. Once we've gotten to that answer on why we're going to do those things, then I think we can really run a much more successful philanthropy event. And if you guys are familiar, there's an idea out there called the Golden Circle or Golden Circles, which was really, that principle was founded by a guy named Simon Sinek. And you can see his stuff outside of this presentation if you are interested. TED Talks, there's a really good, about 20-minute presentation that he gives and goes a lot more in depth into this idea of the Golden Circle. So that's kind of right there. If you draw those three different circles, the what, how, and why, that's really what Simon was really talking about, and that's the idea of the Golden Circle. So it might not make complete sense unless you've seen this before, but first off, starting from the outside going in, generally every organization on the planet really does know kind of what they do. I mean, if you compare this to technology companies or anybody else out there, generally everybody knows what they do as an organization. And I think that, we as a fraternity, we generally know what we're doing too. Not everybody, but some organizations definitely do know that, do know how we do those things. Fewer organizations know how they do it. And then lastly, really getting into the why, very, very few organizations know why they do what they do. And as it says there, why is not about making money. that's a result. Why is a purpose, a cause or a belief, and it's if you relate that to service and philanthropy, that really kind of drives the idea of what we should be doing. If you can start from the middle and start to drive your way outwards, then you can start to really answer a lot of questions as they relate to what types of service events you're going to do, who they're going to benefit, and maybe your partners that you're going to have on campus and in the community. So if you kind of reverse that idea of the golden circle there and start with why, answer that first, then go to how you're going to run the event. Lastly, you can sort of answer, what the event's going to be. And that might seem counterintuitive at first, but if you really get into the whole concept, it does make a lot of sense there. So moving on to running a successful event, really this comes down again to once you've answered that question of why, then you really can go a lot further. And a quote here: "The only ones among you who will truly be happy are those who will have sought and found how to serve." And that's by Albert Schweitzer. And if you don't know anything about him, he's another good person to look into for just motivation and a lot of good things that he did in his life.
I think the key, as you start to look at why, you really need to identify is what is the purpose, what is something that you're passionate about, because without a true passion, a chapter will simply choose an organization or an event to do just in order to check off a checkbox. And when we're really talking about serving others, it's not about checking off a checkbox, but it's rather about finding something that you can rally beyond, something that is going to incite passion with your members and maybe even in your community. And so when we talk about doing an event, again, planning an event, and we can give you the details and we can give you an outline, but until you get motivated individuals behind it, you will never really truly be as successful as you could be. So as we dive into planning, I want to make sure we put particular emphasis first on the why, and that you and your organization truly spend some time focusing, discussing, and deciding on why it is that you have decided to do an event. And then from there, we can very easily go into the planning. Very simply, when and where will you host an event? Locations are critical. Just like in real estate, what are the three most important things in real estate? The same thing in event planning. Location, location, location. Location will dictate the size of the event you can have, the type of event you can have, and even sometimes limit when you can have the event. Immediately following that, you dive directly into cost. What are the costs associated with this? Because you want to make sure that at the end of the day, you're actually raising money for this organization. So many times when we work with chapters, we talk about large, huge, grandiose events, and more times than not, at the end of the day, the chapter would have been better off just writing a check to the organization, where the chapter will invest $5, $10, $15 or more $1,000 into the event, and when everything is said and done and they've done all their final accounting, they're writing a $2,000 or $3,000 check to the organization. So are we doing it because of our ego? Are we doing it because we want to throw a concert? Or are we doing it so we can truly raise awareness for an organization and give them the largest possible donation from our resources? So again, costs are very important as you go through, and then identifying who your attenders will be, because that will then factor into how much profit can you have. When you look at peers on campus, faculty, community, family, you really do need to identify who can attend, and are we thinking outside of our SAE or even sometimes on our campuses, our Greek bubble sphere of influence. So we want to make sure we're reaching beyond the norm and extending our reach, because many times there's partners that we don't consider when we start planning an event. Go ahead, Steve.
So as some of you may know, maybe you didn't know, but Children's Miracle Network is our national philanthropy partner. And now by no means does that mean that you have to do anything specifically with them, Children's Miracle Network Hospitals that is, but we've started to do a few things around the country as far as raising awareness with Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, and that's something that we definitely would like to continue to do. Again, it's not something that you have to do, but it's there's certainly some benefit to, if we're going to have this partnership, I think making that partnership as active as we can is going to definitely bring on some more of the awareness for what Children's Miracle Network does, along with all the other service events and philanthropy events that chapters do around the country. So one quick and easy event that we've done over the past couple of leadership schools is a balloon campaign. And you may have seen these at different grocery stores and different places around your community where, you'll be asked to give $1 and you'll write your name on the balloon, and then that balloon will be put up on a wall. And it kind of just shows, there's just sort of a visual there after the event is over. You see these hundreds or hopefully thousands of different balloons up there on the wall that represents $1, each one that was given to the organization. So last year at the John O. Mosley Leadership School in 2012, we ended up raising just about $1,500, which was an amazing start. We had no clue that we would even get close to that in the beginning. And then at the Western States Leadership School that was held last month in Las Vegas, we raised $3,300. And again, we went far and above where we thought we were going to make. And with both of these events, we didn't offer any kind of incentive or any kind of prize or anything along those lines. So really, the main thing was just bragging rights. And I think that pretty much any campus, you could get the Greeks to go compete against each other. And I think that's a really simple way to raise some money. And it also, there's a visual aspect of it too. So you can have the balloons up in maybe your student union or somewhere that's really public. And through that venue, you can then talk about what Children's Miracle Network does and hopefully maybe even bring someone from your local hospital out to the event. So what are we going to raise this year at 2013 Mosley Leadership School? Who knows? Hopefully we're going to try and surpass $1,500 from last year. And my personal goal, I would love to see us go higher than the Western States Leadership School. A couple other events from Children's Miracle Network. Extra Life, if you haven't heard of that one before, that's a newer event that Children's Miracle Network has started. And you may have seen races in the past where your friends or family will donate a certain amount of money depending on the number of miles that you run. Extra Life, what they do is essentially you're trying to do the same type of thing. Get your friends, family, people at school, faculty members, and all those different things to donate a certain amount of money for the number of hours of games that you'll play, so video games. And I think, for me personally, I think that most of the chapters that I visit, I think would do really well with this event if they really reached out and made this a big event for individual chapters. And again, you could make this a large event on your campus too. And lastly, with Children's Miracle Network, this is more of a university-wide type of an event, but dance marathons are something that raises just, in my opinion, I never knew, an obscene amount of money. I think they raised over $11 million last year through the dance marathon events. So great things, and if your campus doesn't have a dance marathon, as mentioned down there in the chat box, Aaron Curtis is always looking for people to start new dance marathons around the country. So definitely lots and lots of opportunities with CMNH.
Stephen, I just wanted to jump in real quick because
Sure.
I think in our haste, and sometimes as we discuss these things with each other, we forget to go to the basics. And as I've met with chapters throughout the realm over the years, what I've noticed is sometimes we get a little confused on the definition of service versus the definition of philanthropy, and sometimes we even commingle them. And I just wanted to take a moment to make sure we truly understand the differences and maybe discuss them, and maybe as we go throughout, people look for some opportunities to see the differences and how they can maybe expand what they're already doing in their chapters. And so when we talk about service, we are literally talking about hours of our time. We're talking about the donation of efforts. One of the examples I saw was a great example of one of our chapters saying they work with a local shelter and they clean up at the shelter, and they also do some invasive species removal at a local park. That's service, where we're giving our time, and we're out there giving our what is called sweat equity. And so when we think about service, the way I always remembered it was sweat. We're out there working, we're out there doing. And philanthropy is really about raising. It's raising awareness and raising money. It's about being able to give an organization opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise if it weren't for our involvement. So philanthropy is about raising, again, awareness and money, and service is about sweat. And sometimes we get that confused. So I did just want to take a moment, as we are really right now focused on the philanthropy aspect, that everybody is truly aware of the differences.
No, thanks, Shay. Definitely. I think that's certainly a good thing to clarify. And I noticed that Philip there from Connecticut New Ada was talking about Extra Life and Dance Marathon being great events. Dance Marathon, that's something that definitely takes some time to put together. But, if your university is able to work on that, then I think that, you really are able to do a little bit of both, service and philanthropy, raise awareness. You can do things in your community, and then also raise, significant amounts of money. So just sort of wrapping up the idea with Children's Miracle Network, just sort of a recap. It looks like we've raised just over $400,000 for Children's Miracle Network since 2004. And our partnership, continues. If you do a little bit of a comparison, it may be somewhat of an unfair comparison, as you can see down there at the bottom how much money we've raised total last year. But FIMU raised $769,000 and Sigma Chi is at $389,000, while last year we only raised $108,000. Now I say only because I'd love to see that number get higher, but as you can see just right there below, the fact that we've raised, getting near $1 million for different organizations around the country, I mean, that's an amazing feat. So I hope that all of our chapters are able to keep that up and, continue raising money for any organization in your community, but then also continuing to push that relationship and partnership that we have with Children's Miracle Network. So some of the ideas we wanted to kind of continue to talk about too were events that were easily repeatable, something that isn't going to take an absolute ton of time, and these might even be different types of events that you can plan before the end of this spring term is over. Sometimes, we get caught up in the idea that, as Shay was saying, these ideas and events need to be huge and really, move like just tons of people into action, but sometimes the smaller events are just as successful.
I think a lot of times we also forget that it's the simplicity of things. And again, it's to keep it simple, silly. Some people use other words for that last S in the acronym, but the simpler, the easier. And again, when it's simple, typically it costs less money. A balloon campaign should cost you almost $0 because the balloons are all donated to you or given to you by Children's Miracle Network. And then you're collecting money, and the publicity. Again, they have all the materials. They will partner with you and give you those things. And is that something that's easily repeatable? Absolutely. And it's one of those things that people will talk about, because during that time of the year, how big of an impact can you make visually with those balloons? So again, keeping it simple is really important.
And also thinking about those repeatable events and whatnot. If you create something that really sticks on your campus, it can be something that really drives people to look forward to your event, every year. If you've got one each semester, every October or whatever it may be, the campus and the community are really looking forward to SAE's event, or SAE / another fraternity, another sorority, or some other organization on campus or in the community. If you can really make your community look forward to those events, they're going to be a lot more fun. And kind of move on to this next slide here. Mandatory, in my opinion, especially when it comes to service and philanthropy, I think that's where, if you make something mandatory, in my opinion, it immediately means that it's probably not going to be that much fun. Because, why does it got to be mandatory? If it's going to be fun, people are going to come out to it just because they want to. So if you make your events sort of like brotherhood events, where people want to be there and they're looking forward to it for a couple of weeks as it's getting closer and closer, you're going to probably get a lot higher participation than you would have any other way. If you had a minimum number of hours that you're trying to reach, if you don't make it mandatory, I bet you'll probably surpass whatever that minimum number was if you just went ahead and didn't make it mandatory. So that's something to keep in mind. And also remember that individual hours do count towards your chapter's total. So you certainly don't want to have one or two guys doing all of your service events and service hours, but if you've got a few people that really have a passion for it, those hours can definitely count towards your chapter total.
I think another opportunity is there's nothing wrong with you as leaders faking it till you make it. Sometimes we forget that we are the thermostats of our chapters. And what I mean by that is we set the tone. We moderate the temperature of our chapter based on our own energy levels. And the rest of the members of the chapter, more times than not, are thermometers. They react to the temperature we set in the room. So if we come in and we are excited and talking about an event that's coming up, that will be contagious. And if we can get a few other of our key members to do the same, all of a sudden, it won't have to be mandatory. It won't have to be something that we levy fines for or that we put people on sanctions for or social probation, but that everybody wants to be there. And Steve keyed in on a great thing is it needs to be viewed as a brotherhood opportunity. The more time we get to spend together, the more opportunities for brotherhood, the more time that we get to spend as a group, building memories that are going to be some of the best times of our lives. So remember, fake it till you make it. It will be a huge tool in your arsenal in chapter management.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a few other ideas that are out there that you guys could certainly do easily in your community, and again, these can be done probably even before this term is over. Volunteering at a local school. A lot of schools tend to need volunteers, and that's something that you can really make an impact in someone's life. Maybe that's going into a younger classroom and reading to the students. That's something that's really fun for the kids, and it's cool for you to be able to go in there and sort of interact, with the different kids and just be able to give back. Volunteering at a food bank or a homeless shelter, that's something that almost every single community around the country needs. Food banks and homeless shelters tend to get a lot more help if you think about it around the Christmas time, around December time period. But they need help year-round. I think that's something that people tend to forget about, and myself included, is that these food banks and clothes banks, all those different types of things, they need those resources throughout the year. And one of the things I've actually learned is interesting is most of those clothing shelters or places that are taking in clothes, they tend to need men's clothes more than anything else, because most men will go through and wear their clothes out and then just get rid of them, and they forget about, hey, there's somebody else out there that might need this. So service clubs, this is something, Big Brothers Big Sisters, that's one idea, and again, you guys could probably come up with tons of different ideas if you really brought these events to your chapter. So just one more little quote there, Shane. I thought these would be kind of nice to break some things up in here, but the rare individuals who unselfishly try to serve others have an enormous advantage. They have little competition. So if you know anything about Andrew Carnegie, I personally didn't know too much about him until the History Channel show, The Men Who Built America. But after that, I have a ton of respect for the things that he did. And again, I think being able to give back is just so important within the fraternity world, but then also just in your personal life.
Absolutely. I think as you start to look into planning your event, one of the first steps you need to do beyond location is, who are your partners and how can they help you? Delegation is key, and as William had said earlier, buy-in from the chapter is essential to the success of the event. Oftentimes, as chapters, what we look at as our chairs when we elect people is they're typically our best person at something, or they're the person that has the greatest passion. And so what we'll do is we'll make our best rusher the recruitment chair. We'll make our most social guy the social chair. And the same thing goes with philanthropy and service. And what we end up doing is we turn those people, instead of doers, instead of eminent managers, which is what a chair should be. They should be a delegator. They should be a manager. They should be a team captain. They end up becoming eminent doer. And they end up having to be all things into this one category. And if we get complete buy-in, we've got to get the whole chapter involved. And so we need to delegate. We need to get a committee system working. And as James said, this is essential to everything in chapter operations, not just service and philanthropy, but we need to really look at this as a key component to the success of our chapters. So as a manager, you've got to assign tasks, you've got to give authority, and you've got to create a buy-in, obligation. You've got to get them in and committed from the get-go. And so sometimes we are afraid of giving up control because we might fail. Again, a good manager checks in with his team, gives them keystones, benchmarks, follows up, and makes sure that they are successful, because the true success of any manager is the success of their team members. So as you look at this, this is where it's all about. How do you do that? Here's some ideas, and there's many more ideas that can help make you more successful as you move forward as a delegator, manager. And again, if preparing our men for life beyond college, we've got to train them how to become managers. Another part, what are some other partners available to us beyond our chapter members? We talked about earlier about other campus organizations, and I don't mean just other Greeks, fraternities and sororities. So many times we get locked into that bubble of our little world, and we need to look outside of that, because there's a huge population on any campus that is non-Greek, and they are just waiting for opportunities. And if you bring the event that they are passionate about, for the organization that they love forward, they're going to jump on board and be some of your largest advocates. So we need to look at that as well. Our national fraternity staff, the people doing this presentation, as well as your local regional director, and again, even other volunteers within our organization. And then the nonprofit organizations that we partner with. They're the professionals. They do this day in and day out, and they're amazing at it. Take the advice they give you, take the recommendations they give you, and use them, because they are the experts, and we need to learn how to use those resources to the best of our ability. The True Gentleman Day of Service, as it's been saying on almost every slide, is coming up on April 26th to 28th. This is our opportunity as an organization to show the power of the numbers of our nearly 200,000 living undergraduates and alumni to do something great by using the power of the small local level chapters, alumni associations, housing corporations, all to come together on that weekend and to show what we can do as one organization, the impact that we can make in giving back to others. And again, this is a service day, so that means sweat. We're out there working for others, we're giving back, we're doing. So what can we do? So if you can get something, and again, we're going to try to get this known, and we're going to try to log how many hours we give during the course of that weekend. And this is usually in conjunction with the National Youth Day of Service. So many of your schools already have events planned. You just need to partner with them. Look at the resources on your campus. Find out from others on your campus what's going on. And again, if you want more details, refer to the SAE.net website /TGDOS for True Gentlemen Day of Service.
And one thing, just to kind of wrap up the TG Day of Service, as you'll notice there, the second to last bullet point, this is new this year. Everybody who submits a form, a commitment form for the TG Day of Service, is going to be entered into a drawing for a free leadership school tuition scholarship. So really, push that out there to your chapters and make sure you guys get that done, because that's an amazing opportunity. I mean, to get another person going to leadership school, I think that's just a really cool way to try and get more people out there. And the commitment form is very simple. It's usually just it's your chapter information along with the event information, and we try and get as many of those different events into the record as we can. So definitely make sure that you keep everybody locally and nationally aware of what you guys are doing, so that way we can recognize the good things that you guys do around the country.
That's absolutely key. And as you're, publicizing, it says publicity. Oftentimes we allow the true gentleman to hinder us. And what I mean by that is we always think about the line that says, who does not boast of his own possessions or achievements. And we use that as our excuse or crutch not to go out there and shout from the mountaintops the great things we are doing. We all know what's out there in the media about SAE and Greeks in general, and most times it's not in the positive light. It's the one or two incidents, the isolated things that get the most attention. And so therefore we got to go out there and we've got to tell. And many times we miss the easiest part of the tell, which is a picture. And in this day and age, with all of us that carry smartphones and digital cameras, there is really no excuse for us to not have a ton of pictures from every single event that we participate in. And what simpler way to share and publicize than to take a picture and email it off, post it on Facebook, tweet it, put it on Instagram, and let people know what you're doing. It's a critical component to the ongoing success, which makes it something that is repeatable for the future, because people are talking about it more than just leading up to it and the day of the event, but they're talking about it for a period to come because they're seeing those pictures. With publicity, what are some other venues that you can use and avenues that you can use to get the word out? Many times we'll talk about our school newspapers, but we forget there's community newspapers as well. Again, we want to expand our reach when we're doing these events. We want to make sure that we're going beyond just the Greeks and we're going just beyond our local schools, but that we're going into the community, which we are a part of when we attend those schools. Our schools are a part of that community, and we should be making an impact there. Again, newspapers, city, and local community ones. Social media, which I think I covered pretty well, Twitter, Facebook. I think MySpace is dead, so hopefully none of you guys are using that still. But there are other venues that we are being used, and you know what is most critical at your locality. So make sure that if Instagram's the thing on your campus, you're using it. whatever it is that is the most popular thing, and embrace those and use them to your advantage.
And William is making some good comments there in the chat, along with James too. Find your communications major in the chapter if you've got one, and let him kind of bone up on his skills and put things out there in the community. Maybe the correspondent of the chronicler, and then also remember that you guys can send things to the editor for the record at editor@sae.net, as William mentioned down there in the chat box. So, with these things, think big. There's no reason to think that, as Shay was saying, that the true gentleman, our creed should hold us back in some ways. It should really be pushing us forward all the time. So, think big and make those big things happen on your campus.
The thing I always share with my chapters is make it easy for us to brag about you. If you're not sharing this, what you guys are doing in emails and text messages with your chapter advisors, your province archons, your Greek advisors, your regional directors, all of those people that are in your sphere, if you're not sharing that information with them, they don't have the ability to share it with anybody else. And so take that moment, think big, and involve every one of the stakeholders involved in your organization.
So on the opposite side of that coin, we think sometimes, about publicity, and sometimes an image like this is kind of what we see, as far as different kind of events that we're putting out there. Some of you may have seen this before in a different presentation that is given by Brendan Weghorst, but, making sure that you guys are putting the right kind of things in your publicity. It's important to remember, as it's coming up here in a minute, sort of thinking about, risk management and Minerva Shield. And, those are, a lot of the times we don't like to think about those things, and I know personally I'd like to talk about them less, but it's something that we have to keep in mind, because if we don't, things can easily go down that slippery slope. And, we really just need to be careful with different kinds of publicity that we put out there. So as a reminder, as it states here in Minerva Shield, service and philanthropy events, some of them may seem pretty obvious, but we should never really combine alcohol with a service and philanthropy event. That's something that's stated very clearly in there, and it really goes to the idea of just perpetuating the stereotype of the idea of the frat, and that's something that I know all of FAEs are generally pretty vehemently against using that word frat, the colloquialism of frat. So I think that moving away from alcohol and service and philanthropy events definitely stops that stereotype. And, can we have good events without alcohol? Absolutely, absolutely. There's no reason that we can't have amazing events and everybody has a really, really good time and everybody's 100% sober, 100% possible. So for the most part, that generally wraps up at least what I had to say. Remember, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put those out there. But Shay?
No, like I said, I think if we all just focus on the why is it important to us, it will become a lot easier. And I think that's a discussion that every chapter should be having at least once a year, if not more frequently, when they're doing chapter retreats and goal setting, is why do we do what we do, and how can we do it better? Patrick, are there any questions?
Beyond. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just asking Patrick if there were any questions.
We actually have a couple of questions. And before we jump into the Q&A section, I just want to remind everybody that you are able to ask a question in the Q&A pod on the right side of your screen. And following this, just a quick reminder, there will be a post-webinar survey that will be sent out and on your screen. That being said, our first question, does my event have to be the weekend, on that weekend for the PG Day of Service?
I think what the question is saying is for the chapter to get credit for participating in the True Gentleman Day of Service, does the event have to happen on April 26th to 28th? Is that the understanding, Patrick?
That's my understanding.
Okay. James, would you like to take that?
Sure. No, the event can happen anytime around that point in time. So if it's the week before, the week after, that's fine. Go for it. We just, need, chapters to let us know what they're doing and when they're doing it. That's why it's critical that they register their event and, tell us about it afterwards, so we know when the approximate dates are for these events.
Excellent. Our second question is, how do I register my event for the TG Day of Service?
And that, again, is on the website, fae.net/TGODS for the True Gentleman Day of Service. And there's a very simple form there for you to register it and just let us know what you're doing. And again, even many times an email to your regional director or province archon will help them to make sure they're following up, supporting you, encouraging you, and helping get the word out. But also many times, they might have some resources available that you weren't aware of. So even though you register the event, still make sure that you reach out to all your partners.
And remember, too, with the TG Day of Service, that this year we're offering that scholarship opportunity. So, push this to your chapter, and if you've got contacts to other chapters, then certainly pass that along, because, that's another great opportunity to continue learning and moving with service and philanthropy, and also on to other areas within the fraternity.
I'm going to give another 15 seconds. If any of you want to ask a quick question under the wire, feel free to do so. As I'm not seeing anybody jumping at the chance, again, I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to thank our presenters, Shay Stewart, Stephen Cronenberg, and James Irwin. Their contact information is on the screen, as well as Aaron Curtis's from the Children Miracle Network Hospitals. I'd also like you guys to come to our next webinar. It's in 2 weeks. It will be hosted by myself. And again, you're going to get an email and a pop-up after this meeting closes for completing the post-webinar survey. With that, any final remarks from our presenters?
For me, just make sure you guys are getting out there and making a difference in your community. It's, for me, what the fraternity is all about. Thank you guys for coming out tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen, and happy belated Founders Day.
Bye, Alpha.
All right, gentlemen. Good night. Bye, Alpha.